Katy is a fully licensed New Zealand immigration advisor, and the fully licensed bit is really important because there are lots of people, I guess, in New Zealand and also around the world who try to give immigration advice and they're not licensed. And as you will tell when she starts speaking, she's not from these shores. She's originally worked as a barrister in London and has been in New Zealand since 1998. She's also worked as a human rights lawyer in Guatemala and as a consultant to the New Zealand Association of Migration Investment on training for immigration practitioners. She's a contributing author of the 2014 New Zealand Immigration and Refugee Law textbook, and in 2014 was part of a working group whose advocacy led to reopening more than 450 partnership cases decided by the New Delhi branch of Immigration New Zealand. So that's Katy.
Wow.
And yeah, very impressive.
Very impressive.
Me, I'm also a Brit, but I've been here longer than, well, I did my primary schooling in London and from there on came to New Zealand. So I speak with a very Kiwi accent. About VetStaff, VetStaff is New Zealand's only local full service recruitment agency that specialises and is dedicated to the veterinary sector. We are 100% locally owned and operated. There are a few agencies in New Zealand that work in the vet sector, but they're offshore ones. And VetStaff has been around since 2014.
Well, firstly, thank you for amazing introduction. I sort of didn't recognise myself there, but anyway, yes, it just shows how long I've been doing this, I suppose. Secondly, I just, it's a really interesting time because, of course, as advisors, we want to be able to give definitive advice. And it's actually kind of, it's quite challenging for us at the moment because there's a lot of things where we just actually can't give the answers that we want to be able to give. So, I mean, we can still guide, obviously, and we're very agile in terms of keeping on top of everything. So what you get from me today, if I say that I can't give you an answer, it's because there isn't one.
Because you don't,
but at least it might help you feel that you're getting it from the horse's mouth. It's not something that you're not knowing, but is out there. It's just that immigration in New Zealand themselves are completely overwhelmed by this situation. They are as much in the eye, if not more, of the storm than other departments. So that's just a sort of preamble. But yes, Bobby D, I'll take your question. I completely get your situation. So you've come to the end of a particular type of visa and now you've applied for another one and you want to get going in that job. And in ordinary times, pre this, we would have been getting work visas like yours in probably 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
It was actually going really well. And now everything's tipped on its head. And if I can just give you an insight into how immigration's working at the moment. So when they just before we went into lockdown, they already had backlogs because they'd had the Beijing branch closed. So that, you can imagine, that caused issues. Then they went into a sort of rotational, let's have half the team in, half the team out, so they could socially distant. And then we had lockdown so fast that only a very skeletal staff could actually function during level 4 because they're the ones that have got access to computers and enough security from home to be able to function. What we don't know yet, and this is relevant to your question, is when we go back next week, we're still waiting for immigration to tell us whether more of their staff will come online, because it may be that some of them do go into the office because they can't work from home and they can do that safely. So we might see a little bit of creep, but we have been told that work visas that are not strictly to do with COVID are definitely not a priority. And so therefore, what I would consider a veterinary COVID-related job might be where the employer can demonstrate that they really are needed out in the food production world, i.e. on farms. The small animal veterinary wouldn't be considered COVID related. So if that's the kind of job you've got, then your work visa may take a while, Bobby D, sorry, not Bobby Lee. But there are things we can still do. I mean, if a job is still urgent and it really cannot be filled, there are managers that can be got hold of. There's ways to expedite visas. It's just we ourselves don't know how much leverage we're going to get. And it may just be that your visa is going to take a while to get through. And I guess it depends also on whether you're going in under a shortage list vet or whether you're going in under a vet nurse. So.
Yeah, sorry, a vet nurse.
So, and that's the thing. The difference there would be that you're relying on proof that there's no New Zealander to do your job. And they may not want to pick that up so quickly because they may be trying to delay those so that jobs become more available to Kiwis, is the bottom line reality there. So how you can function is you need to have the expectation that any speed is going to be a bonus.
Mm-hmm.
It may just take time, and therefore you may have to eke out some money to survive whilst not working. But I definitely would get your employer to try to support an application for expedition. You can contact me separately if you want to know how to do that. But whether it will work, I don't know. They've just got so many priorities, and they came out with a list last Friday, and work visas are quite well down that list, to be frank.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but thank you for that information. I know it's quite, it must be quite a stressful time for immigration as well. I held off my application. It's actually been on hold for a little while, just because one of the vets, a South African vet, put in for their work visa, and the agent, I think it's called Malcolm Pacific, that was supporting, so that their employer basically supporting their application, and it still wasn't successful in terms of ranking it up the priority list. So I do understand that I'm quite low down. It's just, I know it's
Are they in New Zealand though, or are they offshore?
They are offshore. They're in Australia, I believe.
Because I wouldn't benchmark yourself against that, because for someone who's offshore, there's the border closure.
Right.
So that's a whole different ball game, and that's got its own process for trying to apply to get through the border closure. People who are already onshore will go through a different process, different queues, so I wouldn't mix those up in your mind and take the negative, because you're already here, and there may be an argument for saying, well, you're already here, let's harness your skill set. It's just, sure. I think it's just one of those ones where I couldn't give you a definitive, but you might need a bit of, pushing to see what the boundaries are.
Yeah. It's just hard to know what to push. Do I push it with my manager or the recruitment coordinator, or do I need to go above and beyond and speak to my HR about what my options are in terms of, because my application's already in, so how would that work with supporting that? So
immigration has a specific escalation request process, and that's done by email, and it's usually done by, we do that as immigration advisors, and if it were me acting, I'd be asking for something from your HR or your manager, or both. But if it was from the HR, it would incorporate what your manager's saying about why they need you, why it's really difficult to get anybody else in. But yeah, there just aren't any guarantees at the moment, unfortunately, because they know that if they don't do anything, it may force a situation where your company wants to re-advertise that job, and maybe there's a Kiwi out there now that's come back on shore. That's just the reality. But a lot of what we're saying, I feel like the Grim Reaper, but I have to prepare people.
Oh yes, yeah.
Mentally, for what may lie ahead.
Sure.
But yeah, contact me offline, and we can, I can give you a little bit of a lead and an email address where you can send an expedition request if you want to do it on your own.
That'd be awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate that.
So,
thank you.
Next question. is from Cornelia. And Cornelia says, I'm already in New Zealand, had a work visa, what expired one day before 1 April, so no automatic renewal. I filled out the wrong paperwork and ended up filling an S61 out. They're dealing with it, but no timeline. Any idea how long it might take till I get a work visa, if, and how likely it'll be to get it looking at the current situation?
So this is an interesting one. So just so people know that S61 means Section 61. Section 61, it's a reference to a provision in our Immigration Act of 2009. It's for people who, like Cornelia, end up in a sort of whoopsie, didn't get my visa's run out, therefore I've got no visa. So it sounds awful. You become illegal, you become unlawfully in New Zealand. But this Section 61 allows you to apply to rectify your status. And interestingly enough, in the skeletal team that we have, Section 61 is one of the teams that's still working. And because they do everything by email generally anyway, so that one, again, it's very difficult. How long might it take? So we've been told that unless it is a COVID-19 related case, in other words, are you coming in as a nurse or a doctor or an aged care worker?
I actually know this. I know Cornelia, and she's a vet.
Yeah. So, well, that's what it is. So vets don't come under that unless, as I say, you have an argument for saying, well, I'm a COVID-related vet. I've got a critical purpose, such as I work. I mean, a COVID purpose incorporated, to give you an example, some people who do scanning of pregnant sheep. They've been allowed to come in even with the border closure because that's considered something that's directly relating to this, the farming community, and that's a COVID-related purpose. So I still go back to that thing that there's veterinary roles and veterinary roles. So some may be more easier to argue. So Section 61, I mean, it's just going to take the time that it takes. Again, it's tricky for people acting on their own because you don't really have anybody that you can contact. We do have, I could intervene on something like that, where if I had authorization to intervene, I'd then contact a manager and see what leverage I could get. But unless it's COVID related, it could take some weeks to come to fruition. So they're working, so they're still working in that team, but they will prioritize the COVID cases above all others.
Okay.
That's as specific as I can give, I'm afraid.
Okay, thank you. Next question is from Brendan. We've got a UK nurse who's had her visa approved but is now stuck in the UK. Will she easily be able to get visa extensions to get here whenever travel is allowed? And will we have to possibly redo the process if there's a long lag for travel to be allowed?
So, okay, I come back to base principles. Someone's stuck offshore at the moment. The border is shut. So Brendan sort of asked about getting a visa extension. I think what Brendan's meaning is that most visas, when they've been approved, they might be approved for 3 years. A vet nurse would normally be approved for 3 years, but they have a first entry date of within 3 months. So if you got your visa in February, March, April, May, you'll be given a date in May by which you need to come into New Zealand. And I think that's what Brendan's asking about. Can I extend that date because I can't travel before that date? Now, again, Immigration New Zealand, sorry to say, they're very aware of this issue because we keep feeding them issues like this. And there's a whole raft of people in this situation. And all we've been told is that immigration is in discussions about what relief to give these people. The normal relief, the normal process would be that you would apply for something called a variation of conditions on your visa. And you would fill out a paper form and you would mail that paper form to Immigration New Zealand in Auckland. But we can't do that at the moment. There's no opportunity to receive those applications because there's no one in the mail centre even. But as things open, that's probably what they're going to need, is to apply for a variation of these travel conditions. But what we don't know, and that's going to be a watch this space, is whether immigration will actually extend those conditions, because again, they're going to be weighing up, do they force that job to go back onto the labour market? And they know that if they don't extend those travel conditions, they will force that issue. And then that person would have to reapply, and only if there's no Kiwi now in New Zealand able to take that job will that work visa succeed. So that's a bit of a watch this space. Brendan, can I recommend that you could email me at the end of this, and we could keep in touch about what's the best thing to do. Because is there going to be any movement? Is Immigration New Zealand going to offer any relief to extend out travel conditions? Yeah, that's a really big, tough one.
Thank you. Next question is from Melissa. Another working holiday. I'm on a working holiday visa that expires in September of this year. I'd rather stay in New Zealand than return to the UK. I'm a vet, so qualify under the skills shortage criteria, or I did qualify prior. I'd like to stay in New Zealand. 3 questions. Is it possible to swap my working holiday visa to a work to residence? Cornelia's just come on. How long did you think it would take? Should I start the process now? And what's involved?
Okay, so for this one, because it's a vet, the difference between vets and what we've talked about before with the vet nurses, the vets are still on our long-term skill shortage list. So if you are a registered vet and you therefore meet the shortage list criteria, you've got a major advantage in the current market, because there's no what we call the labour market test. That bit about having to prove that there's no Kiwi to do your job just doesn't apply. So to Melissa, my advice would be, yes, apply now. Don't wait. Just get an application in, because even though it's going to sit and they're not going to necessarily process it, when they do start to process, they're going to be going in date order. And so if you've got that in, and let's say they pick up processing by May, June, and it starts to gain momentum, there is a chance that by September, you're in a really good position to have a replacement visa in place, and therefore the continuity of work will be assured for you. So that would be my advice. I wouldn't hold off applying, because the longer you wait to apply, there's a risk, I suppose, maybe minor. We'll talk about that a bit later, of the shortage list changing, but also you're just losing time in the queue. So you know, even though they're not processing visas at the moment, you can still lodge. You can lodge online. You can put that work to residence visa in online. Okay. That's what I would do.
Thank you. Next question, Dan. Almost about what you were talking about just now. Do you expect the skills shortage list to be changed? It appears there are currently more vets in New Zealand than usual, because many aren't heading away on their OE. Do you think that the current surplus of vets in New Zealand is likely going to make a difference to that list?
Yes, it's such a good question, Dan, because this is one of those crystal ball ones where I mean, I'm a bit like the weather forecaster at the moment, or I was reading one of the leading New Zealand economists who said that every single forecast they've made in the last however many decades has been wrong. So I don't know is the answer. I don't know, because it's complicated. The shortage list, however, let's break this down. We have 3 shortage lists in New Zealand, and the vets are on the long-term skill shortage list. And the clue is in the words long-term. So I'm hoping to see that vets remain on the shortage list. I think that because to be frank, they're going to have to go through reviews of the shortage list, and it takes time. It takes quite a while to actually get something onto or off a shortage list. And I'm not sure that the long-term vista for vets will actually change that much. That will involve consultation with the industry body. I rang your vet association today to get a preliminary view, and they couldn't give a formal view, but they just anecdotally thought that vets would still be in long-term shortage. You only have to have a shortage of 50 a year, and you've got a shortage enough to go on a shortage list. I think those shortages will remain, personally, if I had to put my money on it. But what will change, I think, and Julie would be the expert here, is that because, yes, there are vets who've come home, you know, there will be people who fled wherever they might have been to get back to the safety of New Zealand in this time. And there'll be the ones that would have gone offshore who won't. And they will probably pick up some of the jobs. So in the immediate, even though vets are on the shortage list, employers may obviously choose to go for people that don't need visas and who've got the freedom to do locum work, which visas don't readily accommodate, and all those things. So I think we are going to see an adjustment in the labour market, but it's not to say that, particularly if you're prepared to go quite rural, remotely. Do you agree, Julie, on what I'm saying?
Yeah, there are, right now I can't get enough mixed or equine vets. Hint, hint. Yeah, mixed and equine. The other thing that I'm seeing happening too is there are Kiwi vets who were ready to head overseas on their OE. They were waiting for the destination countries' visas to be issued, and then those borders got closed, ours got closed, and they're still here. So they're kind of in an abeyance at the other side of the equation. Yeah,
but they'll probably only want to take short-term roles.
Yes, they do. Yeah,
you know, so there will be those clinics that will still need people, and I think it's like everything. There's going to be pockets and pockets and niches, and Julie and I, you know, we're in that thing where we've just got to be agile, ear to the ground, working really hard to just, you know, keep on top and not help people have realistic expectations. It's about expectation management. I mean, no one's pretending that this is easy or that we have all the answers.
And we're all learning this for the first time together.
For the first time, yeah, very much so.
Okay, next question.
Hopefully the last.
Isaac is an HR manager of a 9-clinic practice. Because of the lack of available vets in New Zealand, we've advertised heavily in the UK to meet our needs. How do you think border closures, restrictions, quarantining, etc. will make a difference to what we're used to doing? And how would you suggest we start planning for that now?
Well, okay, so this is a really interesting question as well, because it actually encapsulates quite a few things. So, I mean, I guess what I would be saying is that we have to plan. HR managers relying on overseas staff to come in do have to think in terms of probably at least a 6-month border closure, realistically, okay? Unless you can pierce the border closure by being a COVID-19 related, you know, skill set. Because I keep mentioning that because there is still a possibility. I can go online today and I can make it's a brand new application process that was created a couple of weeks back. I can apply for someone and say, this person is critical, let them in through the border. And I've managed to get some of those through. Most of them are health workers, not veterinary. I haven't tried a veterinary one.
I think veterinary will come in another month or so when we need vets for dairy cow. You know, we're coming into calving season. Yeah.
And I keep coming back to the example of those technicians that are doing the scanning of pregnant sheep, because they have been allowed in even now with the border being at its most shut. So I think we're going to see tranches of openings. It will always be case by case. And then we're going to have to, we don't know, I mean, none of us know how long this border is going to be shut. And even if you manage to get, if I manage to get somebody through now, the sheep people or whoever, or actually the other people that have got in are the people fixing Wellington's sewage pipe, they've still got to find a flight. And depending where you are in the world, it's not so easy. And this is straying slightly off, but you know, there are interesting initiatives where people are actually chartering their own planes. There's a plane that's been chartered for the 31st of this month, or 30th, is there a 31st? I don't know, April, last day of April, from South Africa. It'll be a horrible journey. They'll be packed in like sardines. There won't be the usual stops. There won't be any refreshments served on board. You can imagine what it's going to be like. And then they've all got to go into quarantine for 2 weeks in a hotel in one of the 18 hotels in Auckland that have been commandeered for that purpose. If I were an HR manager with these vets, I would obviously be looking to manage my workload with locums. Might be able to pick up some of these people, Julie, that you can redeploy on short term. And I would be thinking of, probably going to have to plan for at least a 6-month wait, or anybody that comes in within that, before the natural opening of the borders, they're going to have to go through a process to get permission. And that's an evolving, that's an evolving space. Yeah.
Thank you. Not sure.
Can I add one thing?
Sure. Absolutely.
Of course, if those vets need their registration for New Zealand, I see no reason why that shouldn't be going ahead, because the vet council's still working by remote. They told me today that it's still only a few days if you're coming from one of the easy countries like the UK. So that can be got in place. There's nothing to stop all that preliminary preparation. And, we're preparing for visas that we can be putting in. I'd still be putting in the visa application for those vets because they're going to go into that queue that we've talked about.
Yeah. Okay. Jen. We've been importing talking about South Africa, we've been importing most of our vets from South Africa. It typically takes 4 to 6 months from job offer to starting the job here in New Zealand. Would you expect that timeline to extend? I guess it'd be too much to hope that'll get shorter and speed up our process here.
Well, it would be very ironic if things got shorter. I mean, I think, funnily enough, there will come a time when it will suddenly contract because there'll be fewer people maybe applying for work visas because there might be fewer jobs. But in the next 6 months, sorry, there's a fly. I'm beaming to you rurally, and there's this fly that's buzzing around. No, I do expect delays. I expect delays, to be frank, because there'll just be so much chaos when immigration gets back to work to pick up speed. But probably the 4 to 6 months, it may not push out. It may not push. I think 4 would be optimistic because of the border. I think 6 months is still absolutely. I would think that's not a bad thing. And I judge that by the fact that in the education sphere, because, we rely on all these international students coming in, they're talking about a February reset because they can't get them in for July, but they think they'll be able to get them in for February. With all the moves to test people before getting on planes, quarantining, there is some hope, I gather, that there could be some vaccination before the end of the year. We might start to see a border opening a little bit sooner, but yeah, sorry, I don't know ultimately, but 6 months could still be it.
Okay, thank you. Richard, I have a staff member on a visa, but am currently only paying the subsidy and don't require 30 hours of work a week. How does that impact on visa status?
Yeah, this is a really messy one. And again, Immigration New Zealand are still in, they're policy writers, if you like, and the minister are scratching their chins over this very issue, because this is a very tricky issue. We've got so many people at the moment on subsidy, so many people having to reduce hours, that there are inevitably people in breach technically of their visas, because that's what it's called. You're in breach if you drop below. If I'm advising work visa holders, I would we're trying to find that balance. Sometimes people can agree on paper to drop back their pay rate to maintain the 30 hours. So we're trying to ring fence the degree to which they're in breach. We also have had from immigration verbally these statements like, we really don't want to prejudice people for things, that are beyond their control due to COVID-19, but we're yet to see how that's going to translate. My own view, and this is based on many years of working with immigration, is that I do hold some hope that they would be benign towards people who are in breach for the 12-week subsidy period. I'm holding to that view. I can't advise anybody go ahead and do that and not worry, I can say, well, look, that's what my belief is, and I can try to reduce the level of breach. But if people are in breach, they're in breach. What I don't think is that Immigration New Zealand will act on those breaches. I mean, the only relevance of a breach of visa normally is if it's very deliberate, and therefore that leads to deportation notices, or if it's indicative of someone who's not that bothered or careful about their visa status, who would maybe therefore the type of person that's going to breach their visa in the future. You could not say that in the cases that are going on at the moment. So that's my view. Beyond the 12-week subsidy period, though, I think if someone's still underworked or underpaid, then you've really got a problem. They probably would need to get off that work visa and find another route, which is why we're having the discussions now with a lot of people. Most of my days are going on this kind of discussion, how to ring fence the problems. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we've come to the end of the questions. I have a question for you. For me, right at the beginning, I stressed it was really important that you're a licensed immigration consultant. So what exactly does that mean? And if somebody is looking for an immigration consultant, what things do they need to look for?
Well, thanks, Julie. That's a great question, actually, because I sort of take it for granted, I guess, but the public don't always know, So basically, we're a very strictly regulated profession. We're more strictly regulated than lawyers. And I say that having come from a legal background. And it's with good reason, because historically there's been quite a few bad apples in the immigration sphere. It's a bit of a wild west. So anyway, we have to be licensed, and we have to renew our licenses every single year. And we are licensed by a government body in Auckland called the IAA, the Immigration Advisors Authority. And they have a public register, just like the vet register. You can go to the IAA website, iaa.gov.nz, and you can look up who your advisor is. Are they on there? You can look them up by first name or surname or business. And then what's interesting is you can actually see how long that person's been licensed. So in my case, you get this horrible long list, because I was licensed I think I was the 28th person in New Zealand to get licensed. That goes back a very long way. So you see all those licenses, and you can also see whether someone is provisionally licensed, which means they're on the trainer wheels being supervised, or if they're on a full license and they have the full experience and so forth. So yeah, that's a really important thing. It's actually illegal to give immigration advice or to represent anybody if you're not licensed and if you're not exempt. Exempt would be lawyers, because they have their own licensing, or MPs, for example, or some employees in companies that are able to give advice as part of their employment agreements. But that's very rarefied. And yeah, so suffice to say, and if you must always ask a professional. I mean, I'm obliged to show my license to my clients. I always show them my profile and it's part of our contract. And as licensed advisors, we've got a really gnarly code of conduct that we have to stick to, and people can make complaints about us to that body, the IAA, if we don't behave, and that's free, and we all live in fear of the IAA.
Thank you. Anything that you would like to say that hasn't been asked?
Well, there'll be just one little thing I would say, because I've been sort of finding myself saying this a lot, which is I just want people who are migrants in New Zealand to feel valued, for number one, even though this is really difficult times, and there might be moments where you're feeling really disadvantaged by being on a visa. I guess I'd send the message that you are not alone. There are, in fact, as of last Friday, I know for a fact there are 363,000 people in New Zealand currently on a temporary visa of one type or another. It's about 1 in 16. So 1 in every third bubble's probably on a visa. And going through all the things that you're going through, with all the questions that you're going through. There's very few people just skating through this unscathed. And as a consequence, myself and, some of our profession are working behind the scenes collegially to try to get some answers and some accountability out of the government, and to also we're helping steer what happens and raising awareness of the really tricky issues. And there's so many. I've seen about 6 completely chock-a-block pages of questions that have been put to Immigration New Zealand to try to resolve arising out of real life situations. So, but I just say, if you're feeling stressed or worried or wanting to know how long or this or that, just talk to us. Even if we can't give you the answers, I'm hoping that we can at least give you some solace that you're not missing out on something that you could be knowing, that it is literally just what it is, that nobody knows, or that you're one of many, and that your situation can be either attended to, or you need to prepare. I think it's, information is everything, Julie, and if people know that their visa is going to take a long time, or it might be very difficult, you can maybe start to prepare and yourself mentally for what lies ahead, which is better than just going blind.
Yeah. Okay. We've got 20 minutes. We can cut it short here. Cornelia, your question was answered right at the beginning of this discussion. So I will send you the audio so that you can listen to that. Contact details. Katy with a K, Katy at intonz.co.nz for email. Katy's cell phone number is 021 058 7056, and you can check her out at intonz.co.nz. So that's intonz.co.nz. And I'm Julie at vetstaff.co.nz. You can call me on 0800 483 869, and vetstaff.co.nz is our website. Anything else I need to say, Katy?
I can't think of anything. I think we can always jump online again in a couple of weeks and keep things, because this is going to evolve. I've been describing it like an onion. You just got to peel off the layers, because it is literally like that. They can't deal with every single problem all at once. I think the government response in New Zealand's been pretty amazing overall. So we can't complain, but we just got to help them peel off those layers and get to the next layer and figure out how to manage those layers. I think the future for vets will always be bright. There's a global shortage of vets, really. It's just some temporary realignment. I don't want people to lose hope or think it's all a lost cause. I don't think that.
Yeah. We've just had Ashley come in.
So I obviously missed most of the meeting, but I guess I have a question relevant to myself, which is I was actually just in the process of applying for residency, and I sent an email to immigration, and they said to just apply, and obviously there's potential delays, but I don't know if there's any more information about that, I guess, with uncertainty with jobs, and I don't know. Yeah.
So actually, can I just check with you? Sorry, it's Katy here, by the way.
Hi.
Hi. I'm jealous that you've gone for a run. That sounds very, very worthy. Are you talking about residents from work or skilled migrant category?
So in the skilled migrant category, but sponsored through work.
Yeah. So with the skilled migrant category at the moment, I don't know what stage you're at either, because that's where you've got an expression of interest, which is done online.
Yeah. So I've done that.
You've done that. Have you been invited to apply?
Yes.
You got to the next stage? So you've got 4 months. So just to give you another insight into the sort of left arm, right arm of immigration, they've literally been telling our profession, lodge, don't lodge, lodge, don't lodge. And we've been going nuts with it, because it's like, well, we've got 4 months deadlines, and how do we actually lodge? Because you've got to lodge with all the documents using a courier.
Yeah.
At the moment, they've told us that if not to lodge anything if it means breaching the lockdown, you know, so if we have to go somewhere to access a document and we can't, we shouldn't be sending it in. But my advice to you, because you've got your own documents there, is you can ring up courier, NZ couriers.
Right.
And you can get them to pick it up from your home, and you can get it sent with all your precious documents if you want to, and you will get the receipt and the tracking details, and it will only be delivered properly when they open up their offices again, which we don't know. We don't know. They haven't announced when.
Right.
But they have said that they will date stamp your application from the date it was marked as received, you know, into the depot by the courier.
Okay.
And that's probably what I would do if I was in your shoes, because I think they will come out with a solution probably after the fact, saying we're actually going to extend these deadlines for people.
Right.
But they haven't done it yet, so you know, in the interim. So do you feel confident to book a courier?
Yeah, I can definitely do that, and I was looking into it. My only other concern was my company is experiencing some trouble right now too, so I wasn't sure what would happen if we potentially lost jobs, or if I'd have to then apply for a new visa, or if that would affect my application after sending it, things like that.
So this is how it goes actually for skilled migrant residents. I'll give you some options, and then you can make an informed decision. If you're reliant on a job to get your points, which again, I don't know enough about your case. Some people don't need the job to get the points, but most do. I'm sure you probably do. Mm-hmm. If your job falls away, your points would fall away, and therefore you would end up with a situation where you can only succeed in that application if you get a replacement job that can get points. And locum jobs don't get points. They've got to be 30 hours ongoing, permanent, or minimum fixed term of a year. So you run a risk, if you think there is a risk, that you're going to put the application in, pay a whole load of money, because it's expensive, right? Yeah. And then you lose the job, unless you can swap out a job in a reasonably short, you know, I mean, they would normally give you about a month to find a replacement job. And if you can't do that, then your application is going to have to be declined, and then you'd have to appeal. Right. And string it all out and use the appeal time to try and get a job, and it might all still come right. The alternative is to just let your EOI lapse, not apply and redo an EOI when the job situation is secure. I'm really happy to have a chat with you offline about which of those things to go for. If you end up this will be good for anybody. If you do end up being made redundant, and by the way, we are having conversations with employers and clients a lot at the moment, trying to save jobs, trying to explore ways where it might be possible to still be in compliance with a visa without completely losing the job. But if you're made redundant and you're on a job-specific visa, not a working holiday, not a partner open visa, then you would again be expected to inform Immigration New Zealand that you've lost your job and get a replacement job, or move on to some other kind of visa, whether it's a visitor visa or whether it's just negotiating with Immigration New Zealand saying, well, I've lost my job and I will go home when I've got the chance. I obviously can't travel at the moment, so will you just let me be until I can book a flight out? And I would expect them to play ball with that. Right.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. That's really helpful. I might, if I have any more questions, contact you if that's okay.
Yeah, just contact us. And, we're professionals and we charge fees, but we don't charge fee for a first chat with anyone. If we think we need to do some really detailed work, then we would quote you on what that is. Okay. But it might just be a 10-minute chat and it sets you right. And we don't charge for that.
Okay, thank you. I really appreciate that. Sorry for jumping in late.
Ashley, about a job, maybe I can help. I don't know. So, my details were on, and I'll have your details, so we can have a chat offline as well.
Okay.
I can hear you, yes.
Yeah. We actually did talk about your question right up, but would you like to ask Katy in your own words as well?
Yeah, that would be great. Basically, I had my visa lapse, and I thought I had a visa, which I didn't. And now I've got a new job, but they made me fill out this S61 stuff, but I've all sent off and everything. I'm just worried they might not give me a work visa. Am I better off, preparing to go home as soon as everything is over, or have they got a time scale on these kind of things, how long it might take, or, yeah.
So, Cornelia, with the Section 61s, as I did go through and explain what that S61 meant to everybody, Section 61. Yes. Now, that team is working. They are still working. And as of last Friday, actually, I'm just having a quick look. Sorry, bear with me, because last Friday we had this great long list of priorities. And it said that they would still be processing Section 61s. So there is a team, because they do those online anyway. But the only thing is that within that, they are prioritizing COVID cases. So, if they've got a Section 61 doctor, or, normal doctor, normal nurse, not veterinary, something like that, or a caregiver, they would prioritize that. But we don't know what the timeframes are for non-COVID cases. I did just get one through myself. It took 3 weeks of me bugging them through COVID, because that person needed to rectify their status. They were feeling very antsy, and they did actually do that. But I couldn't say for sure. Can I ask what your occupation, which job you're applying under? Are you registered vet or nurse?
Yes, registered vet, yes.
So for a vet, I think the outcome ought to be positive for you, because I'll tell you why. Because the thing is that you're still on the long-term skill shortage list, so they don't need to test the labour market for you.
Yeah.
If you are a vet that's working at the moment through COVID, and you could make out an argument that you're critical because, for example, you're working with farm animals and as opposed to the small animal vets, I think you could even ask for expedition of your Section 61 would that be you, or?
Well, I should start as soon as the level goes lower, like, I don't know, level 2 maybe. They want me to start immediately, more or less. Because I think there are 2 vets are pregnant and they need to be replaced. So at the moment, I'm not working, but I've got the contract starting. So but if I don't know if I can have a work visa or not, then obviously. But
meaning, would you be supporting farm work, or would it be
as
more,
well? Yes,
as
farm
well?
work would be fine. Yes, both.
See, for me, that immediately, as an advisor, gets the fire, gets the juices going, because I think, okay, I can see a little angle. Maybe we could go to the Section 61 team for you and say, look, if it hasn't naturally been dealt with by the time we go to level 2, then there'd be an argument for saying, can you pull this one out of your pile, because it's got merit as to why it needs to go ahead now. I mean, immigration, there's always what's on the packet, and then there's always what's not quite on the packet with them, if you get my drift. And so sometimes we just have to go on experience, and if wherever there's merit and there's an argument, it's something that can be done. So don't give up.
I don't want to annoy them,
No,
but I already emailed my person back and I said, look, I'll be doing farm animals as well, can you give me, is that, relevant? Can you do it a bit, sooner rather than, till everything is lifted up? And he just wrote something back, I'll be dealing with your case, but no time frame, nothing else. So
yeah, well, the next layer of that is, because I know exactly what's going on there, which is that they've kind of got this Section 61 team, and they've slightly commandeered some of them into doing COVID-19 related cases, and and they're working offline, and some of them are working. I'm getting emails from immigration officers at like 11 o'clock at night, because they're just like everyone else. They've got kids, they're working from home, and they've had, just to give you an insight, they made a process for people who are stuck offshore, applied to come in through the border closure, and within 3 weeks they had 3,500 people asking for border exceptions, and they were having to use some of the Section 61 case officers to turn their minds to those cases. So I can't give you an exact time frame. I don't know. I would let your case run because you're not working at the moment anyway. So there's absolutely no reason why they would expedite you now.
Yeah.
But if you haven't had any joy and we look like we're going into level 2, and I'm assuming we're going to get a few days, if not a week's notice of going into level 2, you could contact me and we could either I guide you to do it yourself or I do it for you and go and make an approach to them. We would need to argue that it really is quite vital. There's no one else around to do that work. They can't cover it. And I think the farming aspect is critical because this country, they definitely want to keep farming going. It's super important.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. Yep, I'll keep a note of seeing the company. I found it already online. So is it Katy, was it?
Yeah, Katy at IntoNZ. So my company is intonz.co.nz. So we work with Julie, and we don't just cover vets, obviously, but we love working with vets, and we love the fact that you're here. I wish, see, if I were the immigration minister right now, I'd be sending out a jolly big thank you to all the migrants, as opposed to making them feeling really insecure.
Yeah.
But not the minister.
At the moment, it is tricky because, you know, if you don't know if I'm going to go or not, am I better off, you know, arranging the next flight home, or, you know, it would be just nice to know. But if there's a good chance I'll get another visa, then.
Cornelia, I mean, you know, I don't want to kind of go on at too length, but my absolute gut is that you would be better off staying and waiting for the outcome of your Section 61 than going offshore and it getting a lot more difficult to get back in or anything. I think, I mean, I would think Section 61s are not, they're a weird process because they're different. They don't have to give reasons. They don't have to give anything. They don't have to follow any particular instructions. It's sort of, it's made quite nastily because the assumption is you don't have a visa. But for people who've just, you know, inadvertently not applied for the right thing on time, have a really good skill set, they're on a shortage list, they're working in areas that we need, they and it's a first time whoopsie, it would normally go through.
That puts my mind at rest. Thank you very much.
Oh, good, that's what we like.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'm just going to mute you, Cornelia.
Yep.
Righty, I think we will call it a day. Thank you all for turning up. Thank you for your questions. Katy, thank you so much. I realise that you're probably really in demand right now, so thank you for giving up an hour plus of your time, and at such short notice as well. So thank you.
Anytime. I'm impressed with your absolute facilitation skills here. Brilliant. You've done it amazingly. Look great. Yeah.
This is the first one, so yeah. Look forward to the next one.
I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for having me.
And to Ashley and Cornelia and Bobby D and other listeners, please, if I can help you with your job wherever you are, just Julie at vetstaff.co.nz 0800 483 869. Seriously, I'd love to help. Like Katy, you know, if it's just about answering your questions, if I have an answer, then I'm more than happy to share it with you. So go out there and be safe, stay home, stay in your bubble, and everything else that Jacinda says. So thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
See you.